Welcome to Redefining Medicine, an intimate and personalized program that illustrates a different side of the practice of medicine. Our in-depth conversations will focus on mentors and motivators who are consistently reshaping, redefining, and rediscovering the field of medical healthcare. I would like to welcome Dr. Alex Zhavoronkov. Working in biotechnology, Dr. Zhavoronkov is an expert on the uses of artificial intelligence, deep machine learning, and genetics in the areas of anti-aging, regenerative medicine, and the development of pharmaceutical compounds.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zhavoronkov, for joining us today. I know you're just minutes off the stage from delivering a very powerful presentation, I'm sure. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit about your background and what brought you to research what you're researching today.
Well, thank you, Monica, for inviting me. My background is in computer science. So my first two bachelor degrees actually had nothing to do with biology and medicine. And I started my career in high-performance GPU computing. So that's actually something that's driving AI today. But pretty early in life, I realized that aging is a problem that needs to be addressed and solved, preferably during our lifetimes, or at the very least, it needs to turn into something more treatable, and it's one of the sources of many age-related diseases. So I thought that the most altruistic thing to do for anybody on this planet is to go after aging, because that's where you can contribute the most to the society and also generate more quality-adjusted life years than anywhere else. Because, you know, as a medical doctor, you might generate a few thousand quality-adjusted life years by treating a very large number of patients. But if I can add 1 year of life to everybody on the planet, I generate 7.5 billion quality-adjusted life years. So it's pure math. After a short but very, very successful career in IT, I decided to switch into biomedicine. So did my master's in biotechnology, worked at a lab, started looking at genetic sequencing and at non-invasive prenatal diagnostics, did my PhD, and then switched gears heavily into AI for healthcare applications. And now we are one of the top groups in the world in applying specifically deep learning and reinforcement learning to drug discovery and biomarker development.
And what led to the development of your biotech company, Insilico Medicine?
So we started asking ourselves questions on how can we apply those new and very hot techniques in deep learning and reinforcement learning to biomedical applications. Right now you see autonomous cars driving around, those Teslas. You've got autonomous trucks, revolution in image recognition, voice recognition, text recognition, even imagination of new objects using AI. And we started looking at applying those techniques to biomedical applications and started going specifically into drug discovery and chemistry to make deep neural nets imagine new molecular structures. But then we also started thinking about how do we apply that to aging, and realized that aging is that particular bridge between biology and AI, because everybody on this planet has age. Not that many people have specific diseases and everybody looks very different, but everybody has age. So that's a very interesting feature to groom the many other data types together. And also very incompatible data types if you think about them separately, like, for example, wearable data with imaging, with genomes. So we started asking those questions, and it actually turned out to work. So some of those hypotheses that we came up with in 2013 and 2014 came to fruition, and we started a company around that. So we managed to first show that we can improve drug discovery using deep learning, and then we showed that we can apply aging research and artificial intelligence to biomarker discovery in age-related diseases. So, and that also led to kind of the next stage of company development.
Have you been able to determine, and this is a totally selfish question, but have you been able to determine a demographic that's aging faster than others?
So that's a very good question, and a lot of people are trying to do that. It looks like the Asian population at least looks younger to the deep neural net and lives a little bit longer statistically.
Any specific place in Asia or just the entire?
Well, Asians in general, of
Right.
course, Japan has much longer lifespans, and also the Japanese look younger to the deep neural nets that are trained on Central and Eastern Europeans, for example, or Canadians or Americans. But it looks like studying the population specificity and population level effects of aging, it's interesting, but at the same time, you will get only marginal benefit at the end. Well, so you will identify maybe some genetic differences, you will identify some lifestyle choices that people make in various geographies to live longer and maybe even look younger. But those are very marginal changes. Those are very marginal effects because you don't see people living past 122 and a half, the current record set by Jean Calment, anywhere. So to really push the limit, to really push the envelope, you really need to look at more pharmacological and regenerative medicine interventions rather than looking at a specific population and realizing why they live longer, because they actually don't live much longer.
Can you explain the impacts of regenerative medicine and how you see it affecting the future of medicine?
Well, regenerative medicine is already transforming healthcare in many ways, and there has been more advances in this area over the past 10 years than during the entire human history. So regenerative medicine is entering medicine in multiple countries, like Japan, for example, adopted legislation where regenerative medicine can be delivered in a very fast track. So we started collaborating with many regenerative medicine companies. One is Biotime, specifically, which looks at the various regulatory mechanisms that regulate cell differentiation processes and that regulate the embryonic to fetal transition in multiple cell types and multiple tissues. And we've developed a really interesting resource together with them called Embryonic AI. It's available as an open platform. You can upload your sample, and the system will tell you where the cell fits in terms of its class, differentiation status, and how far it is from the embryonic stem cells. So I think those kind of techniques are advancing very rapidly and helping regenerative medicine become mainstream. But it's already becoming mainstream. But I think, in terms of aging and anti-aging interventions, pharmacological interventions are much closer to today than regenerative medicine. So I'm talking about what you can do today. So within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more and more regenerative medicine applications coming into the clinic.
So how do you see that personalized medicine will affect the future of healthcare then, and especially with more and more of the new data coming out?
Well, personalized medicine is advancing even faster than regenerative medicine is entering the medical profession, because every pharmaceutical company, every governmental body which is regulating healthcare is looking to introduce personalized medicine into the pipelines because it makes healthcare and medicine more effective, and people are even transitioning from personalized medicine to personalized preventative medicine. So you don't see a manifestation of disease, and you try to prevent it as early as possible. So genomics, epigenetics, and many other personalized screening techniques are entering the mainstream medical profession, and more companies are personalizing their treatments to individual patients. So in cancer, you've got personalized and targeted therapy. where you can really quickly profile a patient and then identify what medicine is best for the individual patient, because previously you had a mainstream kind of shotgun approach to everybody, and many people are just not responding to therapy because they're very different from other people who would be responding to therapy. Our immune systems may look different. And more and more of the personalized treatments are coming in the market and making outcomes better in a more targeted way, so people really see the tangible benefits of personalized medicine. And in many countries, governments are essentially enforcing the applications of personalized medicine on the national scale. So it's no longer it's no longer just a mainstream discussion or an academic discussion. It's already a healthcare process on a national scale. And with artificial intelligence, precision medicine got a completely new boost. So now you can personalize to a specific individual patient, not only to a specific patient group.
So let's talk a little bit about your presentation this morning. What do you think was the single most important message that you wanted to relay to the constituents in the audience about what you're doing in your research and big data and deep learning, et cetera?
So I guess the most important message is that we need to prepare for a revolution of AI-generated molecules and new biomarkers developed using deep learning techniques and reinforcement learning techniques, because that is a very transformative technology for the entire healthcare industry and for anti-aging specifically. And my major message to the audience, because most of the audience are anti-aging professionals, is that by predicting the person's chronological age accurately within every data type, so with some of the very available and abundant retrospective data types like blood tests, blood biochemistry, or even pictures or imaging data, X-rays, CT scans, you can identify using AI very important and biologically relevant features that can be targeted either with small molecules or even with behavioral modifications. So you can adjust your lifestyle, your diet, and maybe take some nutraceuticals to start looking younger to the deep neural nets on every level. And we showed the few proofs of concept that we presented in scientific literature over the course of the past 12 months. So I think people got it, and I hope that more and more anti-aging professionals will get into AI and also start embracing the data-driven and evidence-based medicine. So you would actually be able to get the data back and see if the intervention that you are practicing or marketing is working or not over the course of a period of time. So I hope that at least people will start collecting more patient data about people who are being treated with anti-aging interventions.
So in regard to the collection of data and the storage of data, et cetera, what challenges do you foresee?
So one of the major challenges is that people just don't do it. So if I ask anybody in the room, usually how many of you have time series data sets of your pictures, of your selfies? So nowadays you've got Facebook, but there you have a lot of variability in terms of how you take those pictures. And very few people would have those data sets. Actually, it's a question, do you have a data set like that of periodic selfies taken every day in controlled
Every
setting?
single day? No, but my kids I'm sure do. And if only they could save the Snapchat photos that they're taking every day.
So good point, but when it comes to, let's say, blood tests or medical imaging or even surveys, so you don't remember how you felt, let's say, 35 days ago.
How many people actually would give an accurate response to a survey anyway, in terms of that?
In this case, that is not the most important aspect. So on big numbers, when millions of people are reporting, you would be able to see clear patterns. So what is important is data collection, so embracing data and trying to collect as many data points about yourself over time. So very few people do that. That's a major barrier. It's easier for a clinical professional to convince, let's say, a couple to store placental cells for some future use than store some data for future use. And
Can we talk about the storage, though, and the concerns that people have in regard to that,
yes.
and cybersecurity and all
So in terms of regulation, of course, there are huge problems. And most of the people regard genomic data as very important and sensitive data. We tried actually even not to work with some of the data types just because of the regulation and maybe negative PR that comes with this data. But pictures and very simple blood tests and other data types that can be easily anonymized, that's something that we try to embrace, practice, play around with, make proofs of concept, and then let the others to work with those data types that are highly regulated. For some of the applications, for example, for insurance companies or even for medical professionals, pictures carry just as much information as, like, for a brief snapshot as the genome. So you can guess the race, skin color, hair color.
If it's time for Botox.
Yes, age. So you cannot guess your age
right.
from a genome. You cannot guess somebody's weight and height exactly from the genome. You can do it from a picture. So sometimes you don't need sensitive data types. But of course, many government bodies, and specifically, for example, European Union recently introduced GDPR rules. So it's general data regulation, regulatory processes that need to be in place. And there is going to open a huge can of worms next year in terms of how do you manage patient or any personal data. So that's actually one of the reasons why our company and also our academic initiatives decided not to work with European Union data at all, and just and even postpone the work on some of the sensitive data types to see how the others will behave in the face of those new regulations. Because governments are sometimes overprotective, and we don't want to get into trouble. So that's why, for example, some of the systems that we're launching are going to be launched in China first, because China has very favorable legislations when it comes to data management if you're not taking the data outside China. And there you can play around with a little bit more data types. But again, we are not going to play around with those data types that are highly regulated, just for not to get into trouble. But I think some of those regulations are going to be inhibiting progress.
So where do you hope to be with your company within 5 years, and with the collection of data, with the distribution of data, et cetera?
So our company is primarily focused on the applications of AI to drug discovery and biomarker development. So in drug discovery, we already have many molecules that we predict to be very good drugs at some point of time. So I want to see some of those molecules come to fruition in clinical trials and in partnerships with the biotechnology companies and of course within the pharma space. We also started working with nutraceutical companies a lot, because that's where you can launch products faster and also measure the efficacy faster, and you have a much more different angle than within the pharma industry. So people work in a different fashion in nutraceuticals and anti-aging space, for example, so you can do things faster. So we already launched 2 nutraceuticals on the market and are getting data back. We want to launch more nutraceuticals on the market. And we want to build better and better biomarkers of aging and also of disease. And within 5 years, we want to have a range of applications that help people stay healthier, but also younger over time. Because for us, young is healthy. So we try to...
How do I get into that study?
Well, we launched an experimental tool, which is free to use in the beta stage. It's called young.ai. You can go online, upload your pictures, blood tests, and we will guess your age. And we're putting more and more data types on this particular system so that people can experiment with their data. For us, it's kind of a sandbox for anti-aging biomarkers, or anti-aging therapeutics and biomarkers.
Can I touch up the photos before I put them up?
It would definitely, if it's a part of experiment, that would be great to get those photos as well, just to see how it works without cosmetics and with cosmetics. In many cases, those deep neural nets focus on features that come from the eye, for example, so it's very difficult to hide.
So in regards to AI, how would you develop biomarkers of aging?
So one of my slides that we demonstrated today during my talk focused on the application of specifically deep neural networks to building very accurate predictors of chronological age for people in their healthy state, using very abundant and very easy to get data types like their blood tests, retrospective blood tests. So in that slide, we showed how you build a predictor of chronological age using a blood test, for example, and a picture, and integrate those predictors together into one multimodal predictor where you take imaging data and integrate it with blood biochemistry data, for example. So that slide shows the applications of deep neural nets to aging biomarker biomarker development. We also showed another interesting slide demonstrating the concept of transfer learning. So you can look at the, let's say, monkeys, Japanese snow monkeys, and you will naturally guess their age pretty accurately, and you probably would be able to even guess the relationship between those monkeys. So one is a child, the other one is the mother, without ever seeing Japanese snow monkeys, because you trained on many, many humans. So we showed this as a concept because that's what we are applying to biomarker development for age-related diseases. So we train on age, a disease that everybody has, and then we retrain on age-related diseases where like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, where the number of samples is much less abundant and very difficult to obtain. So we can train on age and retrain on diseases, just like we train on humans to recognize monkeys, and then we can retrain on a very small subset of monkeys to perfectly guess their age. So that was the slide.
Is there anything that you're doing in regard to cardiac care or anything?
So of course, we do a lot of work in predicting cardiac toxicity of multiple molecules. So cardiac toxicity, it's a big project. We also identify new molecules that clear out all kinds of junk in the cardiovascular system. And our work in metabolic diseases, of course, contributes to the cardio space. But I think in general, any work in aging contributes to cardio space.
And what do you think the timeline is for your research to be readily available?
So we move very fast. We are probably, so we actually, we prioritize speed over anything else and try to be at the cutting edge. So that's why some of the products that we've predicted to be effective a year ago, they're already on the market as nutraceuticals. So in that space, we'll move very quickly. We also try to move as quickly as possible in pharma space, but there we're constrained by regulation and also in general by the culture of the pharmaceutical companies. They move very slowly. Even if they had the ability to move quicker from the regulatory perspective, they're naturally inhibiting innovation even within pharmaceutical companies. And I'm not trying to sound bad. We actually love the space very much, but is just the culture. So we already have some products on the market. I think within 5 years, 7 years, we will have some of our molecules going through clinical trials.
How many other companies or research organizations are doing what you're doing that are in this space?
So nobody is doing the same set of projects exactly, but this industry is exploding. So currently there are 6-7 companies that are applying AI to drug discovery, and maybe 20-30 companies that are applying AI to biomarker development. So some of the companies that are very successful in drug discovery is Atomwise. Also, we like the company called Numerate, another company called Exscientia. So many of those companies, they started just a few years ago due to the explosion in AI, and some of them are also moving very quickly. And many companies are coming online from China and Korea, so Asia is really driving progress. So I think within a year or two, there's going to be lots of competition. Probably not in the aging space, because there you need to have a little bit more focus and expertise, specifically in the aging world. And that's why we really want your audience, so the A4M audience, to get into this space.
It's fascinating work that you're doing, and thank you so much for contributing to the future of medicine and technology and biotech. It's really quite extraordinary.
Happy to be here, and again, if we could get the message across that this industry needs to be more data-driven and more evidence-based on the mass scale. So you don't actually need to have really good, precise data back, but at least if you start tracking, it's a very good start.
Thank you.
Thank you.